If you have a grievance, you are free to depart. This is our abode. I eventually lost my composure at the individual in front of me who was shouting at me. Geez, I truly accomplished it, didn't I? I pondered momentarily, but I had no remorse. My name is Susan, age 33. I reside with my spouse John and our 3-year-old daughter, Lily. I commenced working part-time at a local grocery store after Lily commenced attending kindergarten. Although my days are unremarkable, I have grown to appreciate my ordinary existence. However, from the past half year, something has been troubling me. Hey Susan, this is a fashionable attire. You should have been cautious when laundering it. The person presenting me with the slightly creased garments complained. She is John's sibling and my sister-in-law. Her name is Patricia. She remains unwed, and as far as I recall, she is 40 years old. Huh? I was unaware. It was merely intermingled with the regular laundry, so I failed to notice. I would assume that by merely inspecting it, you would discern its expensiveness. But I suppose you wouldn't comprehend, as you are fond of Don Brands, Susan. When she uttered that, she retreated to her chamber with an expression that suggested it couldn't be helped. Well, then you should launder it yourself, I whispered. It was always like this. Patricia seemed to presume that I would attend to matters on her behalf. Even after I had laundered her clothes, she treated me in this manner. It was so exasperating, and for some inexplicable reason, I was even preparing myself for my sister-in-law's midday meal preparation. Are you preparing Lily's midday meal, correct? In that case, could you also prepare mine? I attempted to decline by suggesting that she should prepare her own, but she replied that she had never prepared a midday meal before, as her mother always did it for her. I don't mind. I am not your mother who did it for me. I don't mind. I am not your mother. Then this foolish sister-in-law took my daughter's lunchbox to the office without permission, even though I had prepared it early in the morning. I lost my temper. Couldn't you tell that it belonged to Lily just by looking at it? Lily was crying this morning because her favorite lunchbox was missing. Despite my anger, she simply responded, "I thought you had made it for me since it was on the table. I apologize," with a foolish smile on her face. What is with that expression? It is not adorable at all, I thought to myself. By the way, her evaluation of the lunch was, "I am on a diet, so it was just the right amount." She could have at least said thank you. I suggested that she could simply buy lunch, but she replied that she didn't want to because it would be nutritionally unbalanced. As a form of retaliation, I prepared lunches filled with frozen meals for her a few times, but it didn't seem to bother her. Essentially, it was evident that she just wanted to make her own life easier. Enough. 6 months ago, we began living in this house with my in-laws. Since moving here, I have found myself becoming irritated much more frequently. Even if I informed John about it, he didn't seem to take it seriously. While I was reluctantly doing the household chores, my mother-in-law, leaning on her walking stick, started In a conversation, a woman mentioned that she had lost her spouse around 10 years ago, but had continued working full-time. Unfortunately, she experienced a stroke due to slightly high blood pressure. Thankfully, she survived, although she was left with partial paralysis on her right side. She could still walk with the aid of a cane and leg brace. However, maintaining her job became too challenging, leading her to resign from her long-standing position. Now, she relies on her pension for support. It is truly fortunate that you have arrived, Patricia. Thank you as always. I apologize for the interruption. My mother-in-law was never affected by any language impairment and could converse fluently. Whenever my sister-in-law and I had a disagreement, she would always apologize to me in this manner. In response, my self-centered sister-in-law would say, Why? It's convenient to live here since it's close to work. Okay, I'll think about it," showing that she didn't take the situation seriously. My mother-in-law was never an old-fashioned bully and would always express gratitude towards me. Even my daughter, Lily, was very fond of her grandmother. When I first heard about my mother-in-law's collapse, I couldn't have imagined that things would turn out like this. My sister also lived with her, and despite my sister-in-law having a job, my mother-in-law didn't require constant care or become bedridden. I simply assumed that occasionally visit and offer assistance if necessary. However, my spouse had a different perspective. We should relocate to my parents' residence. Following my mother-in-law's collapse and a day at work, my husband informed me of this decision. What? Taken aback, I gazed at him in astonishment, and he stated, "I have already reached out to the real estate agent and will terminate the lease by the end of the following month. Can you simply spring this on me and expect us to move in together all of a sudden? Wouldn't your mother disapprove?" I was bewildered and expressed my shock to him. Despite my objections, my husband insisted, "It will be fine, and it is my childhood abode after all. I will feel comfortable there, and I know my mom would be delighted to live with her son and granddaughter." How laid back he could be. Well, perhaps it may suit you, John, as it is your childhood residence. Lily, would you enjoy living with Grandma? My husband posed this question to our innocent daughter, and she responded, "Yes, Lily adores Grandma." At that moment, I did not anticipate that my sister-in-law would be so dreadful, and I genuinely believed it would be challenging to entrust my mother-in-law to Patricia. Patricia must be facing a difficult time handling everything alone. "Let us all contribute and assist until things settle down," I suggested to my husband. In response to my statement, he replied, "Huh? Assist? Well, yeah, sure." His reply was vague, and I was uncertain if he truly comprehended or not. And so the events unfolded, and before we knew it, we had relocated to my spouse's ancestral home. As expected, my mother-in-law displayed a complex expression. On the initial day of our move, I noticed a peculiar expression on Susan's countenance. "I assure you, I am perfectly fine." "Susan, the sudden decision to move must have displeased you, correct?" She conveyed her sentiments to me with an indescribable look on her face. Upon hearing those words, I immediately deduced that my spouse had chosen to relocate with his mother against her wishes. However, one can adapt to circumstances, and despite our initially formal interactions, my mother-in-law and I gradually developed a friendly rapport through ongoing conversations. She willingly assisted with meal preparation and household chores, stating that it served as a form of therapy. My parents' residence is distant from the city center, and it deeply touched me. My mother and I used to engage in culinary activities together, reminiscent of this current situation. Lily, my daughter, will also lend a hand. Since she started attending kindergarten, her vocabulary has expanded significantly. She interacts with numerous friends, and her appetite has noticeably increased. Lately, she has become more assertive, displaying a sulky expression when her favorite attire is in the laundry or when she dislikes her hairstyle. Even this behavior is endearing, and I can perceive her growing independence. Today, I have decided to keep Lily home from kindergarten. Even when she wears a sulky expression, I cannot help but find her exceptionally adorable, resembling a princess. Whenever her grandmother compliments her in this manner, she often brightens up and happily proceeds to kindergarten. While my self-centered husband and sister-in-law, Patricia, continue to be sources of concern, I have started to contemplate that life is a journey of adjustments and compromises. Living at my in-laws' place might not be as terrible as I initially thought. Little did I know what was about to unfold. Hey, now that we've moved into my childhood home, it would be fair to increase my monthly allowance. One day, my husband actually made this request. I didn't quite grasp the meaning behind his words. "Huh? What are you trying to say?" It's difficult to comprehend. As I uttered these words, my husband looked perplexed and responded, "Well, since we're living here now, we don't have to pay rent or utility bills, right? So you can allocate that amount to me as my allowance." He said something absurd like that. Furthermore, my husband found it strange that his allowance remained the same. even though our household income should have increased since I started working part-time. We've returned to my original home, and everything is free. He even mentioned that. What? Free? What on earth is he talking about? Pondering to myself, I couldn't help but wonder if it was me or if my husband had lost his mind. I truly couldn't fathom his reasoning. If I had to be honest, I was convinced that it was my husband who was being utterly ridiculous. Well, it's true that this house belongs to your mother, but we are the ones residing here and often contribute towards groceries and daily essentials. The house we used to live in was owned by my mother-in-law and had already been fully paid off by my late father-in-law. It is now her property. I believe that she and my sister-in-law Patricia take care of the utility bills, home maintenance fund, property tax, and fire insurance. Since I handle most of the shopping, the expenses for groceries and daily necessities are accounted for within our household budget. My mother-in-law would say apologetically after shopping, "What was the cost? Let me pay for it this time." However, I declined her offer. While our expenses may have slightly decreased compared to when we were renting, the addition of 2 more people resulted in an increase in food expenses. Whenever possible, we were diligently saving for our daughter Lily's future. Additionally, I made lunch for my husband every day, and he rarely ate out. My husband, who had few friends, spent his holidays at home, mostly playing video games. Did he truly need an allowance? I pondered, but I still gave him a reasonable amount. I couldn't comprehend why he was so dissatisfied. Yet, when my husband John realized that our household was covering the living expenses, he muttered, "Why is that necessary?" as he walked towards his mother's room. What is his issue? It's him who is peculiar, not me. While I was contemplating this and preparing for our daughter's kindergarten the following day, I started hearing a commotion from my mother-in-law's room. I discreetly peeked inside, only to witness John angrily questioning, "Why? Why do we have to contribute to the living expenses? This is Mom's house, isn't it?" Oh, what is he even talking about? That's what I thought. As I glanced at my mother-in-law, she wasn't scolding him. Instead, she simply stared at him blankly, as if it were someone else's problem. Her eyes resembled those of a person who had given up on everything. When she noticed my presence, John, over to me, he said, "We no longer need to make payments." He departed, appearing relieved, with a self-satisfied expression on his face. Observing his triumphant departure, I berated myself for my poor judgment in marrying such a fool. However, if things continue in this manner, I may be branded as a neglectful wife who refuses to contribute to household expenses, complaining to my mother-in-law and relying on John. I felt anxious about this when my mother-in-law chuckled and proposed, "Susan, shall we have some tea?" She called out to me in that manner. It was then that I heard a particular story from my mother-in-law. I was about to uncover a shocking truth and a certain plan of hers. A few days later, my mother-in-law and I were preparing dinner with my daughter Lily, just as we usually do. On that day, we were making Lily's favorite dish, dumplings. Lily was also assisting, shaping the dumplings in her own unique way. This is enjoyable. It's a good exercise for fine motor skills. My mother-in-law exclaimed as she joined in to help. Lily quickly grew bored and began playing with toys in the adjacent room. At that moment, my mother-in-law's smartphone, which was resting on the table, rang. The caller ID displayed the name John. "Oh, I wonder if he forgot something," my mother-in-law remarked. Perhaps he simply forgot what to purchase or something of the sort. Since our hands were sticky from the dumpling filling, she deftly used the back of her hand to answer the call on speaker. "Hello, Mom. Hey, come, I apologize for the inconvenience. Please answer the phone politely." What an impolite man. This situation is uncomfortable. I glanced at my mother-in-law, who was silently staring at her mobile device. Assist with the shopping occasionally. My mother-in-law compelled my husband and sister-in-law to go shopping because it was a holiday. Just as I was about to respond to John on the phone, "John, did Mom pick up the call?" I heard my sister-in-law's voice. "No, I couldn't hear anything." "Do you think Lily tampered with it?" Upon hearing John utter those words, my sister-in-law began to say something alarming. However, both my mother-in-law and I turned pale as we listened to what followed. Our hands were sticky, but we quickly pressed the record button. The call ended after some time. After washing my hands, I made a call to a certain location. We have returned. Sometime later, John and my sister-in-law, who were unaware of the situation, came back home. "I'm back." "Wait, what are you two plotting?" It's no wonder my husband John and my sister-in-law looked so surprised. That's because my mother-in-law and I, with troubled expressions, were sitting at the table in the living room, glaring at the two of them. "Huh? What's wrong with you two? You're frightening me." My sister-in-law uttered something of that sort. "Please sit down. We need to discuss something with the two of you." "You're frightening me." My sister-in-law said something similar. "Please sit down. We need to discuss something with the two of you." My mother-in-law stated, then gestured to me. I suddenly nodded and then played the recording of their conversation that I had captured earlier. Nonetheless, it seems that we cannot access our mother's money unless she is no longer here, correct? My sister-in-law conversed with my husband John in a nonchalant manner, as if she were contemplating what to have for dinner. "Is that the case? That's unfortunate. You mentioned finding $50,000. That is why I came here. The most troubling part is that our mother is quite cunning. It is undoubtedly our father's inheritance. We only received a mere $1,000 from him." Their discussion continued, and eventually my sister-in-law remarked, "She moves so slowly, it's frustrating, isn't it? Like when she descends the stairs at a snail's pace. Don't you ever feel tempted to give her a little push?" My sister-in-law uttered something dreadful, and my foolish husband John agreed. I completely understand. The call abruptly ended at that point. Both of them appeared visibly uneasy, clearly unaware that we were eavesdropping. Upon hearing their conversation, I felt a sense of danger towards my mother-in-law's well-being and promptly sought advice from the police. However, they didn't seem particularly helpful, stating that it was a family matter. After the call, my mother-in-law expressed, "I fully comprehend how the two of you feel. I have been pondering this for quite some time now. I am going to sell this house and relocate." The two of them were taken aback by this revelation, their eyes wide open. Only my foolish husband and sister-in-law would react in such a foolish manner. In reality, I have been discussing this matter with my mother-in-law for a while now. The main concern was my sister-in-law. Until I heard about this from my mother-in-law, I had assumed my sister-in-law was making a positive contribution. I have been working for a while now, and I believe it is only fair that I contribute my fair share towards the expenses of our living arrangement. However, it has come to my attention that ever since my sister-in-law started working, she has not contributed a single penny to the household. It seems that she may still have the mindset of a student, believing that house chores are solely the responsibility of the mother. She constantly complains and justifies her spending by saying, "It's my hard-earned money, and I can spend it on whatever I want, right?" Despite her words, she continues to indulge in beauty treatments, vacations, and luxury goods. If she truly has so much money, I believe it would be fair for her to either move out or contribute to the household expenses. When my father-in-law was alive, he used to scold my sister-in-law for her behavior. At that time, she would make a pretense of helping with the housework, but it quickly went back to the way it was before. She never contributed any money towards the household, and since my father-in-law passed away, my sister-in-law has been taking complete advantage of my mother-in-law, doing as she pleases. However, my father had advised me to save up instead of paying living expenses, and now that I have started working, it feels strange to suddenly be asked to contribute. I always had a feeling that my sister-in-law would cause trouble, but there is nothing strange about expecting her to save money and eventually move out. After all, I wanted to have a peaceful life once my children were grown. How many years has it been since she started working? Yet, she still does not contribute anything towards the household expenses. By now, she must be quite wealthy. My sister-in-law looked frustrated and seemed to have no words to defend herself. All she could say was, "I have a job." Relocating unexpectedly can be quite troublesome. To make matters worse, my sister-in-law, lost in her fantasies, began uttering such remarks. "Why would I bring you along? How foolish. You have lived as you pleased until now. Feel free to continue doing so." Finally comprehending the seriousness of my mother-in-law's situation, both of them started to panic. "What about the $50,000? Wasn't that our father's money, Mom? Have you been concealing our inheritance shares? I might report this to the police." These were the words of my naive sister-in-law. When my mother-in-law fell ill, she must have discovered the bank book on her own. My husband and I discussed our mother-in-law, and somehow the conversation shifted to the $50,000. They probably thought they would also get a portion, which is why my husband hastily moved back in. Their foolishness gave me a headache. With a triumphant expression, my mother-in-law calmly stated, "That was my money from when I was single. Your father had no involvement with it. You two have been causing a commotion about inheritance, but you foolish children never allowed me to save any money." My mother-in-law informed me that my father-in-law's favorite phrase was, "How much longer do I have to keep working?" Before marrying me, my husband John lived in the same manner as my sister-in-law, which greatly shocked me. I remember when we were searching for an apartment, he would ask silly questions like, "What is a security deposit? A key fee? Homeowner's insurance? Are utility bills supposed to be around?" I regretted my past decisions when I saw the monthly cost of $30. Our conversation must have disturbed Lily, who was sleeping in the adjacent room. With a drowsy expression, Lily remarked, "If you make a mistake, you should apologize, right? Can Papa and my aunt do that?" Since they are adults, Lily glanced at John and my sister-in-law and commented, "This amused me," which seemed to upset my sister-in-law, who then asked, "What is so amusing? You must have said something to Mom." In response, my mother-in-law intervened, saying, "Stop it. Stop it." However, I calmly replied, "I laughed because I found it amusing. I thought my daughter Lily was behaving more maturely than you." I calmly stated, "I do the laundry, prepare lunch, but receive no appreciation from the two of you. Lily can say thank you, can't she? Why can't you utter a single word, sister-in-law? Are you a baby? I may have gone too far, but my usual frustration burst out in words. Aren't you embarrassed to make me wash your tasteless underwear? Where did your sense of shame go? It would be better for you to move out and find it." As I spoke nonchalantly, my sister-in-law, with a flushed face, retorted, "If you have any complaints, leave. This is our house. Take that annoying child and leave." At that moment, I had reached my limit. "Be quiet. You should go. You, such a fool." I yelled with such force that my throat hurt, but I didn't regret it one bit. Earlier, after dinner, I was watching TV when a segment came on. Grown men and women living in their homes, the number of bedrooms in childhood homes is on the rise. Evidently, these individuals who are technically employed but use all their income for personal enjoyment continue to reside with their parents and shirk all household responsibilities, behaving like self-centered creatures. The most unsettling part of watching a TV show was not the program itself, but witnessing my husband John and sister-in-law Patricia burst into laughter at the question posed. Are there really people like this out there? Whether my sister-in-law was silenced by my disapproving glare or by my response, I do not know. A few days later, my mother-in-law made the decision to move out of the house. "Well then, I am putting this place up for sale. I expect the two of you to vacate by the end of the month," she declared, leaving without disclosing her new destination. Who would have anticipated such a turn of events? We now have to find a home for the four of us to live in. It would be ideal if we could find a lovely detached house. When my husband uttered his nonsensical remark, "If it's just the two of you, wouldn't a two-bedroom be sufficient?" I quickly retorted, "And how do you come to that conclusion?" John laughed and asked, "Two people? Ha ha ha, how do you figure?" He and my sister-in-law found the situation amusing, but I paid no attention to them and said, "All right then, Lily, shall we go visit my mother?" In response to my words, our daughter Lily happily exclaimed, "Yes, I'm excited to see Grandpa and Grandma. It's been a while." She had a smile on her face. What do you mean? Who is he?" He appeared flustered, as if he was unaware of the current situation. His perplexity was rather amusing, leading me to declare, "I am ending our marriage." The mere thought of Lily and I being pushed down the stairs one day fills me with fear. I can no longer continue living with you. In response to my statement, he stumbled and said, That was just a joke, right, sis?" My sister-in-law, possibly concerned about losing her potential housekeeper, replied, "Why yes, let's live happily together." John even had the audacity to suggest living together in my parents' house, to which I replied, "How can someone who cannot even take care of their own parents possibly care for others?" That is what I told him. Right at that moment, the taxi we had called arrived. As Lily and I got into the taxi, I said, "Please feel free to live your life as you please." I left my in-laws' house with a smile. In the background, I could hear John crying out, don't go," like a child. In the past, I found his childishness endearing. However, now I can only view it as, wow, I feel sorry for him. As for John and my sister-in-law, they ended up renting a small apartment without having to pay a security deposit or key money, as their savings were minimal. With limited life skills and a reluctance to lower their standard of living, they inevitably face difficulties. They should face those difficulties. It is too late for regrets. By the way, the reason my sister-in-law was noisily preparing a lunchbox was because she was trying to impress a coworker. Little did she know, the coworker already had a wonderful girlfriend. Her efforts in making those lunches, which were obviously intended to gain favor, were ultimately in vain. She didn't create herself, but rather became a subject of office rumors. When they suddenly transitioned from enjoyable meals to something dreadful in the lunch container, I heard it caused quite a commotion in the workplace. Apparently, she was the target of many jests behind her back. This anecdote was relayed to me by an acquaintance who coincidentally worked at the same location as my sister-in-law. I couldn't help but chuckle, but she is now a stranger to me, so I couldn't care less. After returning to my parents' residence, I now live harmoniously with the assistance of my parents and my daughter, Lily. My former spouse, John, devoted all his free time to gaming and rarely interacted with Lily. So far, she hasn't appeared lonely or shed any tears. She has established new friendships at her current preschool and appears content attending with a smile on her face. When Lily grows older, if she desires to see her father, I will permit her, as it is her entitlement. I aspired to care for my family and live each day without any remorse.